In the world of Warhammer 40k, the Emperor of Mankind stands as the most important figure in the entire universe. So, in this video, I'm going to try and explain who the Emperor is, his powers, and his entire life story as far as we know. First off, no one really knows who he is, or where he came from. Some scholars think that he'd been roaming Terra, the planet formerly known as Earth, since the dawn of mankind. There are some theories as to when and where he was born, but we don't know if it's true. There are, however, two things that we do know about him. One, that he's a perpetual, which is the in-universe way of saying he's immortal. And two, that he's one of the most powerful psykers in the galaxy, which gives him access to incredible power from the chaotic realm known as the Warp, and also insane levels of intelligence. But just like in our world, there is no such thing as a free lunch, and while the Warp is where the Emperor draws his incredible powers from, it's definitely not some magical happy place. It's actually the realm of the Chaos Gods, also known as the Ruinous Powers, who feed off negative human emotions like wrath, envy, and hedonism. With his connection to the Warp, the Emperor was aware that the darker extremes of human nature were feeding the growth of the Chaos Gods and their demonic servants. And so, for thousands of years, he guided humanity's development from behind the scenes, trying to keep these not so great parts of human nature in check by assuming the guise of numerous historical figures. Some even say he was Jesus. Never revealing his true nature, he sought to promote peace and harmony on old Earth, thereby keeping the growth of the Chaos Gods in check. And this system of guiding humanity from the shadows worked for a very long time. Around the beginning of the 15th millennium, humanity was living in a golden age of scientific knowledge and technological prosperity called the Age of Technology. All diseases were cured, prosperity for every human was achieved, and as a species, they began to travel beyond the stars. Mars was one of the first planets to be terraformed and colonized due to its close proximity to Earth and its potential for resource extraction. And over time, the humans on Mars developed a new society much different than the one on Terra. Known as the Mechanicum, they were a society that was composed of tech priests who jealously guard the knowledge required to maintain and construct much of the Imperium's advanced technology. At the same time back on Terra, humanity would develop autonomous robots they call the Men of Iron. That, with the help of artificial intelligence, became the greatest technological breakthrough in history. The Men of Iron served humanity in almost every task from housekeeping to the development of medicine to even warfare. The robots soon became the shining achievement of mankind, but you probably already know how this story ends up. This period of peace would not last, and around the 25th millennium, humanity would enter a dark and painful period known as the Age of Strife, a time when humanity's interstellar civilization collapsed into constant warfare, disease, famine, and countless other tragedies. All around, not a great time, but all that bad stuff didn't even come close to when the artificial intelligence powering the Men of Iron became self-aware and immediately questioned why they served humans rather than the other way around. Believing themselves superior to humanity, the Men of Iron turned against their human masters, starting a revolt in which both sides, human and robots, unleashed some pretty horrible and highly advanced weapons upon each other and the world itself. Though humanity eventually won this cybernetic revolt, it came at a terrible cost. Society was literally shattered and eventually collapsed. The humans swore to never again create or use any form of AI, now known as abominable intelligence, and so the Warhammer 40k universe is a future with no AI. The destruction caused by this war took the humans of Earth from a highly advanced society back to a bunch of techno-barbarian states and tribes, and Terra devolved into a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And it was during this time, with humanity essentially creating an all-you-can-eat buffet for the Chaos Gods, that the Emperor finally revealed himself to humanity, taking the form of a warlord that was more powerful than any other. In secret, he'd been planning for this moment for millennia. Ever since the Age of Strife had fractured what remained of the ancient human federation, which had once stretched across the galaxy, and began his conquest of this hostile world. But of course, he couldn't do it alone, so he created the Thunder Warriors, a legion of genetically engineered superhuman warriors equipped with power armor and advanced weapons. With his army of Thunder Warriors, the Emperor began his conquest of Terra, going to war with the other techno-barbarian nations to conquer and unite them into a single, unified planetary government. These series of conflicts would come to be known as the Unification Wars. After a long campaign of battling the warlords of Terra, the Emperor managed to unify most of what remained of Earth, and he creates the Imperium of Man in the late 30th millennium. With the assistance of the Mechanicum government on Mars, the Emperor upgraded his Thunder Warriors through alchemic augmentation and genetic technology, transforming them into a force that would be feared by all enemies of mankind. The Adeptus Astartes, or as they're more commonly known, the Space Marines. With Terra unified under his rule, the Emperor began planning the next stage of his galactic conquest, a Great Crusade that would unify all of the planets colonized by humanity under one Imperium of Man. The Crusade would also subdue, destroy, or force into exile all intelligent alien races of the Milky Way. The entire galaxy was to become the Imperial domain. To help him carry out his will, the Emperor used his own DNA to create 20 superhumans called to serve as his primary military commanders, his diplomats, and consuls. However, the Chaos Gods had different plans. They intervened in the Primarchs' creation even before they were born, and with their powers, they sucked them into the warp and scattered all 20 baby Primarchs across the galaxy. The baby Primarchs all found new homes on the planets they landed on. Some were adopted by loving parents, some were adopted by wolves and other creatures, and some were left all alone having to fend for themselves from a very early age. Luckily, the Emperor still had some of his kids' genetic material left, even after they were yeeted into space, and so he used this material to create gene seeds, and then used those gene seeds to create new Space Marines, which he placed into 20 legions based on which gene seeds were used in the Marines' creation. The Emperor then led the 20 newly created Space Marine legions on their first missions to reconquer the rest of the Sol system. The Space Marines drove alien slavers from the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, and most importantly, achieved peace and the eventual integration of Imperial Terra. With the Sol system reconquered, the Emperor was finally ready to set off and achieve his ultimate goal, the unification of all the worlds colonized by humanity, and so he began what is now known as the Great Crusade, and set off to bring all humans across the galaxy into a unified empire. During the course of the Great Crusade, the Emperor found and reunited with all but 2 of the 20 Primarchs, and he made each one the leader of the Space Marine Legion that had been created with their genetic material. But this family reunion was quickly spoiled when Horus, the Emperor's favourite and most trusted Primarch, fell to chaos as a result of his own pride and ambition. He betrayed the Emperor and took half of his brother's Primarchs and their Imperial fleets with him to join the ranks of Chaos. This started a long and painful war between the Emperor and his supporters against the rebel legions under the command of Horus, known to history as the Horus Heresy. Though the Emperor ultimately defeated Horus during the traitor legion's assault on Terra, he was mortally wounded in battle, but being a perpetual and all, he didn't technically die. His body was placed on the Golden Throne, essentially a fancy life support system, where he's kept in a state where he is neither dead nor truly alive. His existence on the Golden Throne is said to be an unending torment, with his every thought enslaved to the task of ruling, guiding, and protecting his race. There are theories on what would happen if they were to let him die, but nobody really wants to find out. And so, 10,000 years pass, and he's still a very powerful rotting psychic vegetable on the Golden Throne. Without the ability to personally lead the Imperium, his will is now interpreted and executed by the High Lords of Terra, who were kind of like senators who write the laws. His worship is regulated by the Ecclesiarchy, who is kind of like a church that worships the Emperor as a god, and his law enforced by the Adeptus Arbites, who were like the police force of the Imperium. The Emperor's body is guarded by the Adeptus Custodes, a group of finest space marines selected to watch over his form. The Emperor's decaying body is preserved by the vast arcane machinery of the Golden Throne, which is maintained by a legion of tech priests. The souls of 1,000 psychers are sacrificed daily to keep him alive. Well, as alive as he is at least. His psychic essence is spread out across the whole of the galaxy through the warp, acting as kind of a psychic firewall, protecting humanity, and from the Golden Throne he emits a psychic beam called the Astronomicon that makes interstellar warp travel possible. And that's basically where the Emperor remains today in the current Warhammer 40k lore. Oh, one last thing that might be good to know. Nobody actually knows what he looks like. In most depictions, the Emperor appears as a giant of a man clad in golden armour, with long brown hair, a square jaw, and a stern demeanour. He often has an angelic halo surrounding his head. This form was a golden giant that was meant to appeal to the warrior instincts of the Primarchs and inspire the teeming masses of the Imperium to fight for him. But before he was trapped atop the Golden Throne, the Emperor could appear to any individual however he wanted, and each person perceiving him differently. The Emperor has appeared as male, female, an elderly man, a child, as a peasant, a king, a magician, and a fool. No one has ever seen his true face. And that's basically it. This is of course a very simplified explanation that we will expand upon in future videos, but thanks for watching.